The air inside the packed press conference room buzzed with tension. The stage was brightly lit, casting a commanding glow over Karoline Leavitt, who stood tall behind the podium. A row of microphones in front of her carried the logos of the biggest news networks in the country. This was supposed to be a routine Q&A session, a discussion about policy, leadership, and the upcoming election season. But what no one expected was that this event would spiral into one of the most controversial moments of her career. In the audience, journalists from every major outlet waited impatiently. Some held their pens and notepads ready, others had their cameras rolling, but one reporter in particular had an unmistakable fire in her eyes. Samantha Hayes, a young, ambitious journalist from a progressive news network. Samantha had built her reputation on asking the tough questions, the ones politicians didn't want to answer. And today, she wasn't going to hold back. Karoline had been answering questions smoothly for over 20 minutes, keeping her composure and steering the conversation exactly where she wanted it to go. But then, Samantha raised her hand. A moderator hesitated before nodding toward her. "Go ahead, Samantha." Samantha leaned forward, gripping the microphone tightly. "Miss Leavitt, you speak a lot about integrity and leadership, but there have been claims that your recent campaign strategies have been misleading. Do you deny that you've manipulated public perception?" A murmur rippled through the room. Karoline's expression didn't falter. Instead, she gave a polite, calculated smile. "I'm not sure what exactly you're referring to, but I can assure you." But Samantha didn't let her finish. "I'm referring to the specific allegations that your campaign has been using selective data to paint an exaggerated picture of your success. Do you take responsibility for that?" Now, the entire room was watching with heightened interest. Karoline's fingers tightened around the podium, her polished confidence showing the first hint of strain. "I appreciate the enthusiasm," she said coolly, "but let's focus on facts rather than speculation." Samantha didn't back down. "So, you're saying those numbers weren't manipulated?" Silence. A few journalists exchanged glances. The tension thickened. Karoline exhaled sharply, her patience visibly thinning. "I'm saying," she began, her voice now sharper, "that I will not engage in a game of gotcha journalism with someone who clearly has an agenda." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Samantha leaned in closer to the mic, her voice unwavering. "Isn't accountability part of leadership?" The energy shifted. Reporters sensed something big was happening. Cameras zoomed in, capturing every flicker of Karoline's expression. Then, in a move no one saw coming, Karoline Leavitt took a step back, turned, and walked off the stage. The room exploded. Shouts from the press filled the space. Some called after her, others frantically typed on their laptops, breaking the news in real time. But the question remained. Why did she walk away? And more importantly, what would happen next? The moment Karoline Leavitt walked off the stage, the entire press room erupted into chaos. Journalists turned to one another in disbelief, frantically typing, whispering, and scrambling to be the first to break the story. Cameras stayed fixed on the empty podium, where just seconds ago Karoline had been standing facing off against Samantha Hayes. Samantha, still holding the microphone, blinked as if processing what had just happened. She had expected pushback. She had expected deflection. But she hadn't expected Leavitt to leave the stage entirely. "Did she really just walk out?" a reporter from CNN muttered, his fingers flying over his keyboard. "Unbelievable," whispered another from the Washington Post. The headlines were being written in real time. Breaking: Karoline Leavitt abruptly leaves press conference after confrontation. Leavitt walks away from tough question. What is she hiding? Samantha Hayes forces Karoline Leavitt. Offstage with one brutal question. Outside the conference room, Leavitt's team scrambled. Advisors whispered urgently into their phones, trying to control the narrative before it spun out of control. Back inside, Samantha felt the weight of every camera on her. She straightened her posture, masking her own shock. "I didn't expect her to leave," she admitted into her microphone. "But if she can't handle tough questions, maybe she shouldn't be running a campaign built on strong leadership." The audience gasped at the remark. The gloves were off. Moments later, a press aide hurried to the podium, tapping the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, the press conference is over. Thank you for your time." A chorus of protests erupted from reporters. Will she be answering questions later? Why did she walk away? Does this mean the allegations are true? The aide simply walked off, offering no answers. Samantha turned to her cameraman. "Tell me you got all that." He nodded. "Every second." This wasn't just news. This was a scandal unfolding in real time. And for Karoline Leavitt, the worst was yet to come. Inside a sleek, glass-walled conference room on the top floor of Karoline Leavitt's campaign headquarters, the atmosphere was tense, suffocatingly tense. Karoline sat at the long, polished table, her jaw clenched, fingers tapping rhythmically against the arm of her chair. 3 advisors, her press secretary, and her campaign manager stood in front of her, all speaking at once, throwing out different strategies, scrambling for damage control. She didn't hear a word of it. Her mind was still back in that moment, standing behind the podium, the bright lights on her face, the sound of Samantha Hayes' voice cutting through the air like a blade. "Do you take responsibility for that?" Karoline's grip tightened on the armrest. The way Hayes had cornered her, refusing to let up, forcing her into a position where she either had to admit fault or walk away. And she had walked away. The single worst thing she could have done. "Karoline," her campaign manager Ethan Ross said sharply, snapping her out of her thoughts. She looked up. Every pair of eyes in the room was locked on her, waiting for her to say something, anything. "We need to respond," Ethan continued. He was tall, serious, a political strategist who had seen his fair share of PR disasters. "The media is running wild with this. CNN, Fox, MSNBC, it's all over. Some are calling you weak. Some are saying you dodged accountability. Others are saying Hayes just exposed the cracks in your campaign." Karoline exhaled slowly, her gaze darkening. Hayes had played her perfectly. "What's our move?" she asked. Her press secretary, Madeline Carter, a polished woman with a sharp instinct for optics, didn't hesitate. "We spin it. We say the conference was hijacked by an activist journalist who wasn't there for real discussion, but for a political stunt." Karoline nodded slightly. That was a good angle. "We also release a statement," Ethan added. "You didn't walk away. You refused to waste your time engaging in gotcha journalism designed to derail an important conversation about policy." Karoline's lips pressed together. "And Hayes?" she asked. Madeline smirked. "We discredit her. We find old clips, anything that shows bias. We paint her as a self-serving opportunist, someone who has made a career out of targeting conservatives." Karoline sat back, considering. The anger in her chest burned hot now. She had been pushed into a corner, but she wasn't about to stay there. "Draft the statement," she ordered. "Schedule an interview on primetime. I'm going to take back control of this narrative." Ethan hesitated. "Are you sure? If you don't handle this right—" Karoline's gaze hardened. "I will handle it." Outside, the internet was already tearing her apart. Inside, she was preparing for war. The damage was already done. By the time Karoline Leavitt's press team finalized her official statement, the media had already written the narrative for her. Cable news looped the same 10-second clip, her walking off stage, Samantha Hayes standing tall at the podium, and the immediate eruption of reporters shouting in disbelief. Social media was even worse. Trending number 1. Leavitt walks away. If Karoline Leavitt can't handle a single tough question, how can she handle running a country? At Political Insider Fire, Samantha Hayes just did what every real journalist should do: hold politicians accountable. And Leavitt, she ran. At Liberal Watch Fire, this is exactly why we need strong conservative leaders. The media is out for blood, and they twist the truth every time. At Patriot First, the divide was immediate and brutal. Some defended Karoline, claiming she was ambushed. Others mocked her, saying she had just ended her own career. Samantha Hayes herself? She was thriving. Her network had already booked her for every major talk show. CNN, MSNBC, and even late-night hosts were reaching out. Live tonight. Samantha Hayes speaks on Karoline Leavitt's walk-off. What really happened? Karoline sat in her private office, watching the chaos unfold from her phone. She scrolled through post after post, her jaw tightening with every attack. "They smell blood," Madeline Carter muttered, standing by the desk, arms crossed. Karoline's fingers clenched around her phone. "Then let's remind them who they're dealing with." Ethan Ross entered the room, holding a list of interview requests. Fox News wants you on Hannity. Newsmax, too. Even Piers Morgan reached out. Karoline nodded, already forming a plan in her head. "We control this story, Ethan. Not them. Book me on Hannity. I'll answer the questions I want to answer and turn this into a referendum on media bias." Ethan hesitated. "And if Hayes calls you out again? She has the momentum right now." Karoline's eyes darkened. "Then it's time to take it back." Tomorrow night, she would be on national television. And she wasn't coming to apologize. She was coming to fight back. The stage was set. Karoline Leavitt sat across from Sean Hannity in Fox News' brightly lit New York studio. Cameras positioned, microphones adjusted, the countdown ticking down. This wasn't just an interview. This was her moment to reclaim control. The network had hyped her appearance for hours, teasing her first response since the press conference disaster. Across the country, millions tuned in, eager to hear how she would spin the controversy. The intro music faded. Hannity, leaning slightly forward, wasted no time. "Karoline, let's get right to it. You walked off that stage yesterday, and the media has had a field day with it. They're saying you avoided accountability, that you dodged tough questions. What's your response to that?" Karoline took a calculated pause. Then she smiled. "Sean, let's be honest. What happened yesterday wasn't journalism. It was a political stunt." Hannity nodded, letting her continue. "I stood on that stage to have a real conversation with the press about policies that affect millions of Americans. But instead, I was ambushed by a journalist who wasn't interested in answers. She was interested in creating a viral moment for herself." Boom! That was the soundbite. That was the headline she wanted out there. Hannity leaned in. "So, you think Samantha Hayes wasn't asking real questions?" Karoline tilted her head slightly, her expression unwavering. "Sean, let's not pretend we don't know what's going on here. This is what the mainstream media does. They don't care about real issues. They care about gotcha moments. They want conservatives to slip up so they can create their next scandal." Hannity smirked. His audience loved this. The clips of her walking away had been replayed endlessly over the past 24 hours. But now, this was her clip. Breaking, Karoline Leavitt exposes media bias after walk-off controversy. She could already see the tweets, the posts, the segments on conservative networks. Samantha Hayes wanted a viral moment? Now Karoline had one of her own. But then, Hannity threw her a curveball. Karoline, there's been some talk about how this moment might hurt your political future. Some are even saying it's the beginning of the end. How do you respond to that? A split second of hesitation. Karoline knew how dangerous that kind of narrative could be. She leaned forward slightly, her voice steady. Sean, if standing up to a biased media means the end of my career, then so be it. But I don't think the American people see it that way. I think they're tired of watching good leaders get smeared by activists pretending to be journalists. Hannity nodded. So, what's next? Karoline didn't hesitate this time. We move forward. We fight back. And trust me, Sean, this conversation is far from over. The screen faded to commercial, but Karoline already knew. The comeback had begun. The moment Karoline Leavitt walked off the Fox News set, her phone exploded with notifications. Trending number 1. Leavitt fights back. She's not backing down. The media can't control her. At Conservative Voice Fire. Karoline Leavitt just put the liberal press on notice. This is how you handle a hit job. At Patriot Watch Fire. Say what you want, but this was a masterclass in flipping the narrative. At Media Insider, it was working. As she slid into the black SUV waiting outside the studio, Ethan Ross, her campaign manager, handed her a tablet showing real-time engagement numbers. We're dominating conservative media right now, he said, scrolling through metrics. Your Fox appearance is all over Twitter, YouTube, and every right-wing outlet. The base is rallying behind you. Karoline exhaled, satisfied. This was exactly the reaction she had planned for. But then, there's just one problem, Ethan added, his voice shifting slightly. Karoline's eyes narrowed. What? Ethan handed over his phone. The headline on CNN's front page hit like a gut punch. Breaking, Samantha Hayes challenges Karoline Leavitt to a live debate. She froze for half a second. You've got to be kidding me, she muttered. Samantha Hayes, riding the momentum of her viral confrontation, had just flipped the script again. Her challenge was bold, direct, and impossible to ignore. If Karoline Leavitt wants to talk about media bias, then let's do it. Live. No scripted interviews, no running. Just the truth. Karoline gritted her teeth. This wasn't just about the press conference anymore. This was personal. Madeleine Carter, her press secretary, shook her head as she scrolled through the backlash. They're trying to trap you, Karoline. If you refuse, they'll call you a coward. If you accept, they'll set you up. Ethan leaned forward. But if you win? Karoline didn't need him to finish the sentence. If she won, she wouldn't just survive this scandal. She'd own it. She tapped her fingers on the armrest of the SUV, calculating the risks. Then, after a long pause, call CNN, she said. Tell them I accept. If Samantha Hayes wanted a fight, she was about to get one. The moment Karoline Leavitt accepted the challenge, the media erupted. Breaking. Karoline Leavitt agrees to live debate with Samantha Hayes. This is going to be one for the history books. At Political Watch Fire. Leavitt walked away once. Will she do it again? At Liberal Agenda. Finally, a real debate. No spin, no scripted nonsense. At Truth Report CNN, eager to capitalize on the controversy, scheduled the debate for prime-time Friday night. Every major network was set to broadcast it live. The format was simple. No moderators. No pre-approved questions. One-on-one. uninterrupted debate. For both women, the stakes couldn't have been higher. If Karoline stumbled, the media would label her weak. If she dominated, she would prove she wasn't just another politician. She was a fighter. Inside the CNN debate studio, the lights burned hot. The stage was sleek, modern, designed for drama. On one side of the glass table sat Samantha Hayes, cool and collected, her signature confidence fully intact. On the other, Karoline Leavitt, poised, polished, and ready for battle. The countdown clock ticked down. 3, 2, 1, live. "Good evening, America," Samantha began, looking straight into the camera. "We are here tonight because Karoline Leavitt says the media is corrupt, that we twist the truth, that we manipulate the public. Well, Karoline, you're here now. Let's hear your case." Karoline didn't flinch. She was prepared. "Samantha, I didn't say all media is corrupt," she corrected smoothly. "I said people like you weaponize journalism to push an agenda. And let's not pretend that's not exactly what you did at that press conference." The first blow landed. Samantha's smile tightened. "So, let's talk about that press conference," she said. "You were asked a direct question. Instead of answering, you walked off stage. Why?" Karoline leaned forward, locking eyes with her opponent. "Because I refused to play your game," she said firmly. "You weren't there for a discussion. You were there for a viral moment. And congratulations, you got one. But tell me, Samantha, was your goal journalism or just boosting your career?" The audience audibly reacted. Samantha didn't break eye contact. "My goal is to hold politicians accountable," she shot back. "Then why do you only hold accountable conservatives?" Karoline countered. Boom! The crowd buzzed. The tension was thick. Samantha hesitated just for a second, and Karoline saw it. She pressed forward. "The truth is, you weren't looking for an answer. You were looking for an ambush. That's not journalism. That's activism." For the first time, Samantha Hayes looked shaken. The tide was turning, and Karoline Leavitt wasn't done yet. The debate had become a battle of wills, and Karoline Leavitt was winning. Across the country, millions of viewers sat glued to their screens. Twitter, YouTube, and political forums exploded with reactions. Leavitt just called out the media on their own network. Legendary. At Patriot Voice Fire, Samantha Hayes looks completely rattled. This is not going the way she expected. At Breaking News, HQ Fire. Whether you agree with her or not, Karoline is holding her ground. That takes guts. At Independent View, on stage, Samantha Hayes was visibly uncomfortable. Karoline had flipped the narrative. The once confident journalist was now on defense, forced to justify herself on a national stage. She tried to recover. "You claim the media is biased," Samantha said, forcing a smile. "But isn't it true that conservative networks push their own agenda too? Fox News, Newsmax, they're not exactly neutral either." Karoline nodded slightly, acknowledging the point, but she was ready. "You're right, Samantha. Conservative media has a perspective, but here's the difference. We admit it." Samantha's eyes narrowed. CNN, MSNBC, The Washington Post, you all claim to be unbiased while spinning stories to fit your political goals. That's why people don't trust you anymore. Another direct hit. The audience murmured, sensing the shift in power. Samantha Hayes was losing control. She glanced toward the producers off stage, but no one could save her. Karoline leaned in, delivering the final blow. "You wanted this debate because you thought you could expose me. But what you really exposed tonight is the way the media operates. You twist stories, you manipulate narratives, and when someone refuses to play along, you try to destroy them." Samantha had no comeback. A heavy silence settled over the studio. Then, applause. Not just from Karoline's supporters, but from neutral viewers who recognized the moment for what it was, a political turning point. Breaking. Karoline Leavitt dominates CNN debate. Samantha Hayes silenced. Leavitt just did what no Republican has done in years. She walked into the lion's den and won. Samantha Hayes wanted a fight. Karoline gave her one. As the debate wrapped up, Samantha forced a closing statement, her voice tight. Well, Karoline, I appreciate the discussion. I'm sure the viewers will make up their own minds. Karoline smirked slightly. They already have. The cameras cut to black. Samantha Hayes had set the trap, but Karoline Leavitt walked away victorious. Wow, what a showdown! Tonight, we witnessed a political moment that no one will forget anytime soon. Karoline Leavitt walked into the fire, faced the media head-on, and refused to back down. Whether you agree with her or not, one thing is clear. She came prepared, and she wasn't afraid to speak her mind. This debate wasn't just about two people exchanging words. It was about something much bigger: the power of the media, the fight for truth, and what happens when someone dares to challenge the system. Now, the real question is, what do you think? Did Karoline Leavitt win this battle? Did Samantha Hayes hold her ground? Or did this debate change your perspective on how the media operates? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one of them. And if you enjoyed this video and want to see more stories like this, don't forget to like this video to support the channel, subscribe so you never miss an update. Turn on notifications so you're always the first to see what's next. The conversation isn't over. In fact, it's just getting started. Stay tuned because we have more powerful stories coming your way. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.